Your favorite Baylor basketball players are getting tampered with right now. How can we stop this? Let's get Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by TurboTax. It is a Wicker Thursday today with Sydney Wicker of Channel 6, KCEN Sports. We're going to be talking about tampering in college basketball after the recent inflammatory Dan Hurley comments and how that actually really could relate to Baylor more than most schools. We'll also take a look at what happened in Kansas City with the Baylor women's team. Sydney was there, and how that's going to affect them going into the big dance. And of course, we will recap last night's game against Kansas State for the men in Kansas City. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Sydney Wicker was in Kansas City when this dropped. CBS Sunday Morning, Dan Hurley talking about how at least 50% of his team is considering the portal, if not already knows what school they're going to. We've heard a lot about epidemics, pandemics the last couple of years, big buzzword. Of course, Sydney, we've heard it mostly in the context of football. This, that, and the other is killing college athletics, killing college football, and the portal is chief amongst them. And now what seems to be a hot button issue over the last few months has not just been the portal, but the tampering going on in the portal. Sydney, is this like the mafia? Is this a real thing? Or is this one of those things we could just cover up? No, tampering doesn't happen. How much do you think's happening like literally right now?
Probably more than we'll ever find out.
A lot, right?
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
some teams, their season's done and they need to get better.
Yep.
Like this could be happening right at this very moment. Like we've heard it with some Big 12 schools in football as well as basketball, but is this, I'll frame it this way. We know the transfer portal makes the game pretty different, and a lot of people still don't like it. It's not going anywhere. I don't know how much we're going to get in terms of limitations or anything on it, but so far right now, we don't know what that's going to be. Right now, the way we see it is the way it's going to be for the near future. So what do you think is worse for college basketball? Just having that freedom of the transfer portal and having to revamp your team every year, or the fact that there are definitely ways that colleges can tamper with guys playing on another team?
I just think having to revamp your team every year is the hardest part.
Stinks.
Building that chemistry is like so important, and obviously that happens throughout the season as you've got bus rides and traveling a lot. Like basketball is one of the sports that has the most games, so it gives you the most opportunities to bond more. Football, you're guaranteed like 12 games, 10 games, that's it. Obviously they have a long off season that helps with bonding too, but I think when you have to rebuild a team every year, that's when it really starts to get difficult. And that's something head coach Scott Drew has talked about a lot, because he's a guy who really likes to build a program and have the consistency. And when you're looking at bringing all these new guys and having to rotate around a lot, it makes it difficult.
Yeah, and he's one who's had to really do that the last couple of years. 3 of the last 4 seasons, they've had to replace 4 of 5 starters. So it happens a lot. And I think we've seen Scott Drew trying to weigh that in terms of, I got all these one and dones and they're not developing any chemistry because they're only here for 1 year. What if I can get some 1-year guys who are at least more experienced? And so far that hasn't really worked either. With a guy like Ray J. Dennis last year, who had a very good season for Baylor, but they went out in the second round. You went out and got 2 of those guys this year, Jeremy Rhodes and Norchad O'Meara. Norchad's been excellent for them. But again, you're scratching and clawing to get in the NCAA tournament. That's not a successful season. And it's pretty similar to what UConn's going through right now. UConn, back-to-back national championships. Baylor didn't do that, but have certainly been in the national championship picture each of the last 5 years. And they're both down on their luck this season. They're both, barely in the tournament. They're not having great seasons, which were so promising at the beginning. And so I hear Dan Hurley say that. half his roster is being tampered with right now. Do you think that could be the same thing happening in a similar situation at Baylor?
That's a good question. I don't know if that I could see it. I
Yeah.
think tampering is difficult because it's like, where do you draw the line between just like basic recruiting and tampering? Like, it kind of walks a fine line.
Mm.
But
Well, any contact right now, I guess, would still be considered tampering. Like
yeah,
anything.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, does it hurt having a conversation? Like, what if you just do,
That's the thing. This
you
is
know?
not different to how, a lot of the big football schools, but specifically the SEC,
Yeah,
they found ways to pay their players before this was before this was legal, right? Like
yeah.
there are 16-year-olds who find ways to smoke cigarettes, It
Yes, it
happens
happens.
all the time.
Yeah,
And
if you didn't have a beer before you were 21, you are a liar,
of
and you
course
know
that
this
didn't
happened.
happen. Of course, I never did that, Sydney. No.
Well, that's because you were just the best kid, Cam,
Yes, and Baylor's a
obviously.
dry campus, so that definitely did not happen.
Mm-mm.
I just think it's an interesting comparison, this UConn thing,
Yeah.
because if that's happening to UConn, obviously they're still getting major recruits. This one season isn't going to do anything to that either. And it's a disappointing year, and these kids go there thinking national championship, not 8 seed. And the same thing at Baylor, they're expecting Final Four, not 10 seed. And does that make for an easier kind of hunting ground for tampering schools is what I'm trying to work out. Is it easier to go to a national championship team and get the guys who aren't playing, or a team that looked like they had the talent to be a national championship team like UConn or Baylor and get the guys who are playing a little bit? Because clearly there's got to be some turmoil. Fascinating to me.
It is. It's really interesting, and it's just that's the world we live in now. I know people don't like it, and it is what it is, but college athletics still seems to be thriving, so they don't really care what our opinions of how that
For sure.
goes
They make
is.
money.
But it's tough. I think, what do these programs want? Do they need one guy or do they need multiple? 'Cause sometimes you do just need the star player that everybody else can feed off of.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really depends. It's interesting though, like you have programs like this who are, going to try to steal guys here or there. And then you have guys who like played for Texas who now play for JUCO this year. Like
Mm-hmm.
you see it bounces around at so many different levels and it just has such an impact everywhere. But I don't know. Tampering is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's
In the
happening,
shadows.
but
Yes.
there's so many talented guys out there and you only need 5 on the court, so it's all about finding the right ones for your program.
Right. And this will be an interesting one to monitor going forward, just in terms of the Baylor personnel situation.
Yeah.
We won't get into it now, but just as like a preview, right? Like VJ Edgecombe gone, Norchad Omier gone, Jeremy Roach gone. And then you have guys like, Rob Wright. I think Jalen Celestine will have one more year. I think that's right. To play with. And it's like, does Rob Wright even come back? If would somebody be interested in Celestine just as a shooter? It becomes really interesting to the point where is Baylor going to be having to rip this down to the studs without firing a coach or anything like that. That's where it's going to get real intriguing, but that's after the basketball season. Right now, we have got postseason basketball going on. The women are getting prepared for the big dance, the real dance. Sydney Wicker was there in Kansas City. She'll give you her reaction and what to expect from this team going forward. We're going to do that next on Locked On Baylor. But first, I have a question for you. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? As One Direction said, the story of my life. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track of that money. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Plus, if you got a partner that you want to collaborate your money with, who wouldn't, right? Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You could track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order, half off. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDON, COLLEGE, for half off your first year. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at Factor. You want to manage money. You're also going to want to manage your diet too. You want to optimize that nutrition? Well, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or even keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. That's my favorite part of it. I also like that it takes the stress out of meal planning, okay? I've started those Protein Plus meals, and they've got flavor and energy that keep me going through these hectic days that we're about to have, these madness days of March. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege, 50 off, and use the code lockedoncollege, 50 off, to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's that's code. Oh, geez. Locked on College, 50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege, 50 off to get, you guessed it, 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Mercy. Let's get back to the show. Sydney Wicker joining us, fresh off a trip to Kansas City, seeing the team formerly known as the Lady Bears get all the way to the championship game of the tournament and losing to TCU. And Sydney, I mean, you were at both these games. A lot of us just watched both these games. Were there 2 separate games, or was this just the replay from the Sunday before?
It felt like the replay to me. And,
It's like the same thing, man.
If Baylor didn't go down by 22 the first time they played, it would have been the 3rd time we've watched this game. That was probably the only difference between the first game and then the last 2.
That it was like 22 instead of 12 or 14.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But other than that, we've seriously watched this game multiple times over and over. I think lately, though, we've really seen the impact of missing Bugs. And Baylor hasn't had that like key woman step up. Nettie has done a great job, but there's only so much you can do when you're going against someone like Sedona and Haley. It's a lot. And then, Yaya did what she could. Sarah did what she could. They need the firepower that Bugs brings. And I think it really showed in the last 2 games how much they missed her in the big stage. Because I think you can win those big games when you have somebody like Bugs in the rotation.
Yeah, and it felt like those TCU games in particular, like that's where they had kind of an advantage, right? Yeah. Like I thought they defended Haley Van Lith very well in the first game and still pretty okay in the second. Like she's going to get her points. There's a reason why she's one of the top scorers in America. And Sedona Prince, again, like you said, she's going to be tough to guard for anybody. But where Baylor would have had the advantage, all fully healthy, is Bugs and Bella Fauntleroy. Kind of the wings and players who can play inside and outside. Obviously, Bugs playing much bigger than her size as one of the best rebounders in the country, not just the Big 12. And so you miss that. You don't have that advantage all of a sudden, and that's going to favor TCU. And so now you've had 2 championship games in the span of 2 weeks. You lost them both, and now you're going into the tournament. You probably still host from what we've been seeing the last few days. But I wonder how that takes a toll on a team psychologically of like, this is 2 championship games we lost in a row, and now they're all championship games from now on. Like, did you get the sense that, like, what did you get the sense of the temperature in the room from the team after that loss?
It really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think, when they played them at the Foster for the last game of the regular season, they knew that they might have a chance to play TCU again in the Big 12 tournament if everything kind of fell the way it ended up happening. And they were like, we know we can beat them and we want that chance again. And that was something that they had said again and again, from coach to the players. Like, the message was all the same there. But then you do get your chance for the third time and you still can't do it. Like, I think it stings a little bit, but I think if there's one thing we've seen from this team, it's their ability to respond well. I mean, if they wouldn't have responded and beat Iowa State the way that they did, which was their first time beating Iowa State in 2 years in the tournament? It had been a while. So I do think they'll be able to wipe this clean. Plus, they have a little bit more time, which is good. But I do think that lingers a little bit. And if for some reason they were to meet TCU in the tournament, I don't know if you get over that hump. That's where
that would be unfair, man.
That would be
I think that would be unfair. I've seen it happen once ever in basketball. A team played another one 4 times. That was Duke and Maryland. And I say I saw it, but it was in 2001. And they literally played twice in the regular season, conference tournament, and then in the Final Four. That would be insane. I mean, wow. But speaking of that,
doesn't happen, but
that leaves too much up to chance, man. It really does. Like, I mean, that's the embarrassment of possibly losing a 4th time is just too much to loom over your head. But now they get ready for this tournament, which you and we both talked about last time. Like, this is still a team that can make a run. And I was disappointed in how they kind of handled crunch time of 2 championship games, but I still do believe that. I still do believe they can make a run. But I'll ask you this, because we kind of talked about it in the context of the TCU games. Can they make any kind of run if they don't have Dariana Littlepage Bugs close to 100%?
Yes, I think they can.
Okay.
It also is just going to depend on where the cards fall for them and who they match up against, because it seems like anytime they've really faced a tough, true, good team, they haven't been able to win. So UCLA,
real echelon UCLA, TCU.
Any of those like top 10 teams we've seen them play, they haven't been able to match with them. So I see this team making a run, even if Dariana Littlepage Bugs isn't there 100%. But I think past Sweet 16s where you're going to see, I don't know if they could get over that hump, just because that's what we've seen from them this season.
And it's important to note, because you mentioned it, like top 10 teams they've struggled with. Sweet 16 would be a matchup with a 1 seed. They're going to be a 4. So right now, bracketology has them in that UCLA one, which I think is interesting, because I'll at least, like, they're not going to be favored against any 1 seed. So I actually am intrigued to see if it is UCLA and a team that they've actually played this year. That would be the only kind of advantage, is that you've seen them and you played them. So anyway, we both have them winning the national championship. Okay. When that happens, we will be martyrs. Sydney Wicker, Channel 6, KCEN. Thank you very much for joining once again and being flexible with both their schedules and making it a little special surprise Wicker Thursday. I love that.
Wicker Thursday. Had to switch it up. I'm just glad my neighbor asked me this week. He was like, "Are you going to be on Lockdown Baylor this week?" And I was like, "I should probably text Cam." Yes. I just got back from KC and I haven't even thought about if I was doing it with Cam. So shout out to John. He's wonderful, because I texted Cam right away.
Sydney Wicker growing the game of Locked On Baylor. We absolutely love that. We love that. Much more, by the way, than we love conference tournaments. But we do have to recap what happened in that Baylor-Kansas State game last night. That is coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, you guys remember taxes, right? I got to do mine. I really do. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Well, now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who could do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. The Bears dispatch Kansas State. They're going to the NCAA tournament. And for those of you who watched the live last night, you knew exactly what we were talking about today because I had the wrong graphic up the whole time. So that's fun. Baylor dispatches the Wildcats. This was an easy one, 70-56, kept them at arm's length the whole time. And honestly, my biggest takeaway, welcome back, Jaden Nunn. Can I get the welcome back Cotter theme music? Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And then Mace comes in, welcome back. Yeah, that's what we're saying for Jaden Nunn, by the way. 18 points for most of the game. He was the game's leading scorer. Gassan gets 20 and VJ Edgecombe gets 19. But what a coming out / coming back party for Jaden Nunn, a guy who I've been tough on this year. He was the guy that I thought was going to be the leading scorer for the Bears coming into this season. I thought he was going to surprise a lot of people. He didn't, or he surprised us, and not in the good way. And it felt like he kind of came back to life last night. 18 points, 7 of 10 from the floor, 4 of 6 from 3. Those all came in the first half. Pulled down a couple of rebounds for good measure as well. This backcourt kind of came alive because Jeremy Roach had himself a night as well. You know, not one that's really blasting off the page, but 9 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, no turnovers in 31 minutes for Jeremy Roach. I'll take that. I'll take that 8 days a week, my man. That's perfect. You didn't get a great Rob Wright game. You just first 3 in forever, but played good minutes, 4 assists in 18 minutes. And then VJ, 7 of 15, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists. And, you know, it doesn't get the kind of headlines that it should because it was in the first half, but the last 2 minutes or so in the first half, VJ took over for a couple possessions in a row and put the game out of reach. Really, I mean, gave them I think it was a 14-point lead at half, and that's the deficit that it was at the end of the game. So, and that dunk, no one, that inbounds alley-oop dunk, no guard in the country can jump with him. But I kind of go back to what I said after the Houston game. And I said this in the post game last night. So if you haven't checked that out, please check that out. It's on the channel and wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening or watching right now, you can also find the post game. But I said after that game, I was like, look, not for nothing. I'm not saying this team's going to go to the Elite Eight or anything like that. But if they play with that kind of effort and that kind of defense they played against UH when they lost on Saturday, like if they come out with that again, they can win a game or two at the NCAA tournament. Like that's what we've expected from them all season long, and we didn't get it. They played with their food for the whole season. And not that Kansas State is a tournament team. They're not. They're a 500 team. They might be better than some teams in the tournament, but probably not the ones that you'll play. But you worked them. You handled them. Their best player had 26 last night. He had 5 in this game. He had 26 in the first game against Arizona State, I should say. Had 5 in this game. They all came in the last 6 minutes. 2 shots. He hit 2 shots the whole game. Coleman Hawkins. It's a guy they went out and got, spent a bunch of money on. Didn't even make the NCAA tournament. Jeremy Roach, nice bounce back. Jalen Celestine hit a 3. He was more lively on the boards than he usually is. And Norchad only had 2 points in the second half, and you waltzed out there with a win. 12 and 14 for Norchad Omier, who it's going to be a lot for him to make it through this tournament if they play beyond tonight against Texas Tech. But that's the kind of effort that we needed to see from this team and this unit, and the execution too. Like I tweeted this during the game, but you know, there's going to be a lot made about the defense and the defensive improvement the last couple of games. And that should be the case, right? This defense has turned it around the last couple of games, even some of the ones they didn't win. They've looked better defensively the last week and a half than they have all season long. But I was so impressed with the way they played offense against Kansas State, right? Like we talked about the backcourt kind of coming alive again. There was no real ISO ball. There was more movement. They weren't just throwing the ball around. They weren't making terrible decisions. They only had 6 turnovers in the whole game. By the way, Kansas State only had 7. So that's a pretty well-played game, pretty clean game. That's why you didn't see a lot of stoppages in that game. But I mean, I'll take that. 16 assists, not the biggest number in the world. You'd like that to be higher a little bit, but with where they've been at this year, 16 assists and 6 turnovers. That's maybe the biggest difference for me. Jaden Nunn hitting shots and really taking care of the basketball. That's going to win you games in March when you have the talent that Baylor has. It looked like untapped potential the whole season long. Maybe that was a little bit of a tap there. You know, maybe they got a new keg and they're tapping that potential, because that looked like close to a team that we would have thought coming into this season. It looked like a top 10 team against a 500 team, because that's what they were going into this season, top 10. But that looked like a team that could make it to the Sweet 16. They look much more likely to do that than they did 2-3 weeks ago. Again, that would take an upset or 2, maybe 2 upsets to get there. It's not an expectation to get to the Sweet 16, but it looks much more possible than it did the last couple of weeks. But it keeps rolling on tonight against Tech. Scott Drew has put the sentimentality aside. He has taken out 1 former assistant already in this tournament. Why not put another pelt on the wall, Scott? I think it would look real good. Take out Grant McCaslin as well, if you're into that kind of thing. Of course, I don't care about the Big 12 tournament unless Baylor wins it. And if we're doing a live post game in a cheery mood on Saturday, it will all count. Baylor will be Big 12 champions, and I will ride that puppy out. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about this performance last night, how far this team can go. Has your opinion changed over the last couple games, or even from this last game? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Helps out the channel. We're bringing you fresh Baylor content every day. Also find us wherever you find your podcast, man. If you guys are up doing something and it's hectic and you don't have time, just go on YouTube and keep the phone open. Like, just find us wherever you find your podcast. That helps out the channel a ton. And let me know what you guys think about this team. And we will see you later tonight on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.